Florida, the Sunshine State, a land of palm trees, ocean breezes, and some of the most extravagant wealth on the planet. It is home to more billionaires than almost any other state in America. Tech moguls, hedge fund titans, and real estate empires stretching from Miami Beach to Palm Beach to the glittering towers of Tampa Bay. But hidden beneath the headlines of Wall Street transplants and crypto kings is a community that most people completely overlook. A community that has been quietly building wealth, influence, and power across Florida for decades, and whose richest members trace their roots not to Manhattan or Silicon Valley, but to the 7,000 islands of the Philippines. There are more than 180,000 Filipino Americans living in Florida right now. In Jacksonville alone, the Filipino community is so large that it is the only major city in the state where the single biggest immigrant group is Asian and specifically Filipino. They came as Navy veterans and nurses, as engineers and entrepreneurs, as dreamers who crossed the Pacific Ocean with nothing but ambition and a willingness to work harder than anyone else in the room. And over the generations, they did not just survive. They built restaurants that became community landmarks, accounting firms that shaped city politics, healthcare networks that became the backbone of Florida's hospitals, and in some cases, business empires worth billions of dollars that planted their flags right here in the Sunshine State. But who among them is the richest? Which Filipino family can claim the title of the wealthiest in all of Florida? Is it a local dynasty that built its fortune from the ground up in Jacksonville or Miami? Is it a Filipino-American tech billionaire whose net worth rivals the GDP of small nations? Or is it a legendary tycoon family from the Philippines itself? One whose multi-billion-dollar empire literally set up shop across the state, bringing a piece of Manila to the heart of Florida. Today, we are counting down the 10 richest and most powerful Filipino families connected to the state of Florida. We will trace their origins, explore their empires, and reveal the staggering wealth that flows through the Filipino community in the Sunshine State. And the family sitting at the very top of our list? Their story starts with a humble ice cream parlor and ends with a global empire worth billions. You are not going to want to miss it. Before we get to the families at the top of this list, we need to understand the foundation they were built upon. Because the story of Filipino wealth in Florida does not begin with a single dynasty or a single fortune. It begins with an entire community, one that has been quietly reshaping the economy of the Sunshine State for decades, and one that most people have never heard of. There are more than 180,000 Filipino Americans living in Florida right now. The largest concentration is in Jacksonville, where the Filipino community numbers over 24,000 in Duval County alone, making it the only major city in the state where the single largest immigrant group is Asian and specifically Filipino. Tampa Bay and the Miami metro area are home to tens of thousands more. Together, they form one of the most economically productive immigrant communities in the southeastern United States. The roots trace directly to the United States Navy. For decades, the Navy actively recruited men from the Philippines, and when those servicemen retired, many settled near the bases where they had served. Naval Station Mayport and Naval Air Station Jacksonville became magnets for Filipino families. Wives and daughters, many trained as nurses in one of the most rigorous nursing education systems in the world, entered Florida's healthcare workforce and never left. The military pipeline created the first wave. The healthcare pipeline created the second. And together, those two waves built a community that now contributes billions annually to the Florida economy through healthcare, professional services, small business, and real estate. Organizations like the Filipino-American Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce represent a growing economic force that is only getting stronger. But within this thriving community, certain families rose above the rest. Families who took the foundation that 180,000 people built and turned it into something extraordinary. Coming in at number 9, we enter the world of Filipino food entrepreneurship in Florida. And it all starts on a stretch of road in Jacksonville that smells like home. In every great Filipino community around the world, there is always a corridor, a stretch of road where the scent of adobo drifts through the air and the signs switch from English to Tagalog. In Jacksonville, that world lives along Beach Boulevard and Atlantic Boulevard, and the families who built their businesses there represent the front line of Filipino wealth creation in the Sunshine State. Maharlika Restaurant and Sports Grill has been described as Jacksonville's cultural landmark for Filipinos, a gathering place where the community celebrates, connects, and does business over plates of lechon and pancit. Owner Idan Castillo built it into more than a restaurant. It is an institution. Nearby, the Valerio family brought traditional Filipino baked goods to Jacksonville through the Baker's Son by Valerio's, filling an underserved market with pandesal and saimata and ubi cakes that reminded a diaspora of everything they left behind. And Mariana's Grinds, the family-owned restaurant built by Florence Bermudes and Jarvis Mendiola, embodies the classic immigrant success story. A family that turned a love of Filipino cooking into a growing business, one plate at a time. These are not billion-dollar empires. They are something more fundamental, the economic anchors of a community. They create jobs, circulate dollars, and build the cultural infrastructure that draws more Filipino families to the state every year. Together, Jacksonville's Filipino food corridor generates millions in annual revenue and growing. Every dollar that passes through those kitchens strengthens the foundation for everything that follows on this list. Food, after all, builds community. But to build real political power, you need someone willing to step into the arena. At number 8, we meet the woman who did exactly that. In 2015, something happened in Jacksonville that had never happened before in the history of the state of Florida. A Filipino-American woman won a seat on the city council of the largest city by land area in the continental United States. Her name was Ana Lopez Broche. Ana is a Jacksonville native who grew up in the Murray Hill neighborhood. Her father was a retired senior chief in the United States Navy who hailed from Hagonoy, Bulacan in the Philippines, a direct product of the very same Navy pipeline that built the community we just described. She married Dave Broche, a commander in the Navy Reserve, and built her career as a certified public accountant, eventually becoming managing shareholder of Ennis Pelham and Associates CPAs, a firm she led to being named one of the best places to work 12 times at local, state, and national levels. She started at Ernst & Young, earned her bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of North Florida, and became one of Jacksonville's most respected financial professionals. But Ana Lopez Broche was not content to shape Jacksonville from behind a desk. She ran for city council and won, becoming the first Asian American ever elected to the Jacksonville City Council and the first Filipino American city council member in the entire state of Florida. 2 years later, her peers elected her city council president, making her the highest-ranking Filipino American in Florida local government. And in 2019, she launched a campaign for mayor of Jacksonville itself, challenging the sitting incumbent in a race that put Filipino-American political ambition on the front page for the first time. She earned the Martin Luther King Jr. Trailblazer Award, the World of Difference 100 Award from the International Alliance for Women, an honor given to women across 6 continents and 24 countries, and chaired the board of the United Way of Northeast Florida. As council president, she personally oversaw a general services budget exceeding $1 billion. Ana Lopez Broche represents a different kind of wealth, not measured in stock portfolios or restaurant receipts, but in institutional power, professional authority, and the ability to shape how an entire city spends its money. She proved that the daughter of a Filipino Navy veteran from Bulacan could rise to lead one of America's largest cities. But political power is only one form of influence. At number 7, we explore a form of Filipino wealth in Florida so vast, so deeply embedded in the state's infrastructure, that most people do not even realize it exists. If you have ever been admitted to a hospital in Florida, any hospital in any city at any hour of the day or night, there is a very high chance that a Filipino American was the one who took care of you. And that is not a coincidence. It is the result of a decades-long pipeline that transformed the Filipino American community into the backbone of Florida's healthcare system and one of the wealthiest professional networks in the entire state. The story starts once again with the United States Navy. For decades, Filipino men served on naval bases across Florida, and their wives and daughters, many of them trained nurses who had graduated from one of the most rigorous nursing education systems in the world, entered the American healthcare workforce almost immediately upon arrival. Florida, with its massive elderly population and an insatiable demand for medical professionals, became the perfect destination. The hospitals could not hire them fast enough. Baptist Health in Jacksonville, Advent Health in Orlando, Jackson Memorial in Miami. Across every major hospital system in the Sunshine State, Filipino nurses, physicians, and healthcare administrators filled critical roles that kept the entire infrastructure running. And here is where the wealth comes in. Registered nurses in Florida earn a median salary between $70,000 and $85,000 a year, with experienced nurses and nurse practitioners earning well into six figures. Physicians of Filipino descent earn considerably more. Now multiply those incomes across thousands of Filipino healthcare professionals statewide, and factor in decades of accumulated savings, pension benefits, and real estate investments in a state where property values have surged for years. The collective net worth of Florida's Filipino healthcare community does not just reach into the hundreds of millions. Some estimates suggest it approaches the billions. A quiet fortune built not through flashy headlines or corporate acquisitions, but through 40 years of 12-hour shifts, professional excellence, and disciplined reinvestment. Beyond the paychecks, Filipino healthcare professionals have risen into positions of institutional power across Florida. Hospital administrators, department heads, medical directors, nursing supervisors who oversee teams of hundreds. Their influence extends far beyond personal wealth and into the kind of institutional decision-making that directly affects millions of Florida residents every single day. This is a fortune measured not only in dollars, but in lives saved, systems managed, and a state kept healthy by the hands of a community that rarely gets the credit it deserves. The Filipino healthcare empire in Florida is proof that wealth does not always arrive with a press release. Sometimes it arrives at 3 in the morning in scrubs, ready for another shift. But if you want to talk about Filipino wealth that does make global headlines, the kind measured not in thousands or millions, but in billions, then we need to change the scale entirely. Because at number 6, we meet the half-Filipino tech genius who became one of the youngest billionaires in the history of the world. Up until now, the wealth on this list has been measured in millions. Local businesses, professional careers, community networks. Impressive, certainly. But at number 6, the scale changes completely. Meet Bobby Murphy, the quiet genius behind one of the most revolutionary apps ever created, and a Filipino-American whose net worth has at various points exceeded $10 billion. Robert Cornelius Murphy was born on July 19, 1988, in Berkeley, California. His father is Irish American. His mother, Rosie Go, is a woman of Filipino Chinese ethnicity who emigrated from the Philippines and, along with her husband, worked as a California state employee. There were no trust funds, no family connections to Silicon Valley. Bobby grew up attending Catholic schools in Berkeley before earning a degree in mathematical and computational science from Stanford University, where he joined the Kappa Sigma fraternity and met a classmate named Evan Spiegel. Their first project together, a website called Future Freshman that helped high school students with college advice, failed completely, but it taught them how to build together. And in 2011, inspired by an idea from fellow Stanford student Reggie Brown, Murphy and Spiegel created a disappearing image messaging app called Peekaboo. The name was later changed to Snapchat. Murphy wrote the code. Spiegel became the public face. After graduating, Murphy took a job as a software engineer at Revel Systems and quietly used half of his paycheck to cover Snapchat's server bills until they could secure venture capital funding. That sacrifice paid off beyond anything he could have imagined. In 2014, Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world. In 2015, Forbes listed him as the second youngest billionaire on the planet. And in March 2017, when Snap Incorporated went public at a valuation of $24 billion, Murphy's 22% stake made him worth over $3 billion overnight. He was 28 years old. At its peak in 2021, his net worth touched $10 billion. As of 2025, it sits at approximately $2.2 billion, fluctuating with the stock, but still placing him among the wealthiest Filipino Americans who have ever lived. Bobby Murphy does not live in Florida. He is based in California, where he owns multiple properties worth millions. But his presence on this list serves a purpose. He is the ceiling, the absolute peak of what a Filipino American has achieved in individual wealth. And he raises a critical question. If the richest Filipino American in tech is worth $2 billion and lives in California, then who is the richest Filipino family actually operating in Florida? The answer to that question is coming, and the fortunes involved make everything we have discussed so far look modest by comparison. We are halfway through our list, and the numbers are already staggering. From local food entrepreneurs to a tech billionaire worth over $2 billion, the Filipino connection to wealth and influence in Florida runs deeper than most people ever imagined. But here is where things get truly extraordinary. The families coming up next do not just have millions or billions, they have empires that span continents. Drop a comment below and let us know who has surprised you the most so far. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the top 5 is where things get absolutely mind-blowing. Breaking into our top 5, we leave the world of Filipino Americans and enter the stratosphere of Filipino global wealth. And we begin with the family that sits at the absolute summit of the Philippine business world. A dynasty so vast, so deeply woven into the fabric of everyday Filipino life, that it is almost impossible to spend a single day in the Philippines without touching something they own. This is the Tsai family, and the scale of their fortune is almost incomprehensible. The story begins with a boy from Fujian province in China. Henry Tsai Sr. moved to the Philippines as a child. His family ran a tiny convenience store in Manila. Nothing remarkable, nothing that would hint at what was coming. Then World War II arrived and destroyed everything they had. Most people would have stayed down. Henry Tsai did not. In the wreckage of post-war Manila, he started selling reconditioned military combat boots and surplus goods to American soldiers. He scraped together enough to open a small shoe store in 1958. He called it Shoe Mart. That single store, built from the ashes of war, became the seed of the largest business empire the Philippines has ever seen. Today, SM Investments Corporation is a colossus. SM Prime Holdings is the largest mall developer in Southeast Asia, operating more than 80 shopping malls in the Philippines and several in China. The Mall of Asia complex in Pasay City is one of the largest malls on the planet. BDO Unibank is the largest bank in the Philippines by total assets. SM Development Corporation builds residential towers for the country's surging middle class. The Tsai family's reach extends into hotels, convention centers, retail chains, and financial services. When Henry S.I. Sr. passed away in 2019, his empire did not falter. It passed to his 6 children, Teresita, Elizabeth, Henry Jr., Hans, Herbert, and Harley, who now collectively steer the conglomerate strategy. Hans Tsai alone chairs China Banking Corporation and the Philippines National University. The numbers are staggering. The Tsai siblings' combined fortune is estimated at between $12 and $17 billion, depending on market conditions, making them consistently the wealthiest family in the entire Philippines. Individually, their net worths range from approximately $1.9 billion to $2.6 billion each. Forbes has listed them at the top of the Philippine Rich list for more than a decade. They are not simply wealthy, they are an institution, a family whose name is synonymous with Philippine commerce itself. But here is the critical distinction. Despite their extraordinary wealth, the Tsai family does not have direct, publicly documented business operations in Florida. Some malls operate across the Philippines and China, not in the United States. Their empire is vast, but it is rooted in Asia. Their inclusion on this list serves a different purpose: to establish the sheer scale of what Filipino dynastic wealth looks like at its peak. Because the families still ahead on this countdown are playing at the same level. And at least one of them has brought that level of ambition directly to the Sunshine State. At number 4, we meet a man whose empire does not build malls or sell shoes. He controls something far more fundamental: the arteries of global trade itself. Enrique Razon Jr. did not inherit a finished empire. He inherited an idea that whoever controls the ports controls the flow of commerce. And he turned that idea into one of the most formidable fortunes in Asia. While other Filipino tycoons competed over retail space and real estate, Razon built his billions by mastering the invisible infrastructure that makes the modern world function. Every container that crosses an ocean needs a port, and Razon owns the ports. International Container Terminal Services Incorporated, ICTSI, is the crown jewel of the Razon Empire. Originally founded by his father, it was Enrique Jr. who transformed ICTSI from a local operator into a global powerhouse. Today, ICTSI operates and manages port terminals in more than 18 countries across 6 continents. From the Philippines to Brazil, from Poland to Australia, when a container ship docks at an ICTSI terminal anywhere on Earth, the Razon family profits. It is a business model of breathtaking elegance. You do not need to manufacture anything. You do not need customers to walk through your door. You simply need the world to keep trading. And the world always keeps trading. But Razon did not stop at ports. He also built Bloomberry Resorts Corporation, the company behind Solaire Resort and Casino, a billion-dollar integrated resort in Manila that competes directly with the mega casinos of Macau and Las Vegas. Solaire transformed Manila's entertainment city district and established Razon as a serious player in global gaming, adding an entirely new dimension to an already formidable empire. The result of all this is a personal net worth estimated by Forbes at $10.9 billion as of 2025, making Enrique Razon Jr. the second richest person in the Philippines. His fortune surged on ECTSY's relentless global expansion and Bloomberry's remarkable revenues. He sits behind only one man on the Philippine rich list, and that man is coming up next. Now, here is where the Florida connection becomes tantalizing. ICTSI's global port operations span the Americas, and Florida is home to some of the busiest and most strategically important ports in the United States. Port Miami handles more cruise passengers than any port on the planet. Port Everglades is a critical cargo gateway. Jacksport in Jacksonville, the same city where the largest Filipino community in Florida calls home, is one of the fastest growing container ports on the East Coast. While ICTSI does not currently operate a terminal in Florida, the natural alignment between Razon's global port empire and Florida's booming maritime infrastructure makes the state a logical frontier. The pieces are already on the board. Enrique Razon Jr. controls the flow of global commerce and owns one of Asia's most spectacular casino resorts. His net worth exceeds $10 billion. But even he is not the richest Filipino alive. That title belongs to a man who started with absolutely nothing, a fish vendor's son from the slums of Manila who built the single largest real estate fortune in the Philippines. At number 3, we meet Manny Villar. Manuel Villar Jr., known to the Philippines simply as Manny, was not born into wealth. He was born about as far from it as a human being can get. He grew up in Tondo, Manila, one of the most notorious slums in Southeast Asia, where his family sold fish and shrimp in the local wet market. As a boy, he hauled seafood alongside his parents before dawn. There was no inheritance waiting. There was no safety net. There was only the decision to either accept the life he was born into or claw his way out of it. Manny Villar chose to claw. He put himself through school, earned an accounting degree, and took a job that had nothing to do with real estate, selling sand and gravel. But it was in that unglamorous trade that he saw something others missed. The Philippines was urbanizing at breakneck speed, and every new road, every new building, every new housing development needed raw materials. He pivoted from supplying construction to leading it. He founded Vista Land and Lifescapes and built it into the largest home builder in Southeast Asia. Vista Malls followed, then All Home, then All Day Supermarket. A fish vendor's son from Tondo was now building entire cities. His ambitions extended beyond business. Villar served as a congressman, then a senator, then became president of the Philippine Senate from 2006 to 2008. He ran for president of the Philippines in 2010. His wife, Cynthia, served as a senator. His son, Mark, currently sits in the Senate. His daughter, Camille, was elected senator in 2025. The Villars are not merely a business dynasty, they are a political one, wielding influence across every branch of Filipino public life. Forbes estimates Manny Villar's personal net worth at $17.2 billion as of 2025, making him the single richest person in the Philippines. From hauling fish in Tondo to commanding $17 billion. It is one of the most extraordinary wealth creation stories in Asian history. But like the Tsai family and Razon, Villar's empire is rooted in the Philippines. He does not operate in Florida. The family that claims number 1 on this list does not just possess extraordinary wealth, they brought it directly to Florida's doorstep. Before we meet them, there is one more name that demands recognition. At number 2, Loida Nicholas Lewis. She is not a tech founder or a real estate mogul. She is something far rarer. She became the first Asian woman ever to pass the New York State Bar examination without attending an American law school. She emigrated from the Philippines, conquered one of the most difficult legal barriers in the United States, and then married Reginald F. Lewis, the visionary African-American financier who in 1987 orchestrated the acquisition of Beatrice International Foods in a deal valued at $985 million. TLC Beatrice International became a $2.2 billion multinational food corporation, the largest Black-owned business in American history at that time. When Reginald passed away in 1993, Loida did not step aside. She stepped up, becoming chairwoman and chief executive officer, guiding a global empire through one of the most difficult transitions a company can face. She became one of the most prominent Filipino-American advocates in the country, championing immigration reform and veterans' rights. Loida Nicholas Lewis proved that a Filipina immigrant could lead a billion-dollar American corporation. But the family at number one proved something even more audacious. In 1975, a 22-year-old chemical engineering graduate in the Philippines opened a small ice cream parlor in Cubao, Quezon City. He and his wife Grace scooped Magnolia ice cream for neighborhood families. It was a modest venture, two young people with a freezer and a dream. His name was Tony Tan Cactiong. His parents were Chinese Filipino immigrants from Fujian province. His father had been a cook in a Buddhist monastery before opening a small restaurant in Davao City. Tony grew up clearing tables and washing dishes. He understood food not as a business, but as a language. Within 3 years, he noticed his customers buying more hot meals than ice cream. So he made the pivot that would change everything. He converted his parlor into a fast food restaurant and called it Jollibee. The timing was extraordinary because in 1981, McDonald's entered the Philippines. Every analyst predicted the American giant would dominate. They were wrong. Tony Tan Cactiong did not just survive against McDonald's, he beat them. Today, Jollibee has twice the number of branches and twice the revenue of McDonald's in the Philippines. Chicken Joy, the signature fried chicken that food critics at Eater have called the best chain fried chicken in America, became a national obsession. But Tony did not stop at the Philippines. Jollibee Foods Corporation now operates over 6,800 stores worldwide across brands including Choking, Greenwich, Red Ribbon, Mang Inasal, The Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, and Smashburger. The corporation's market capitalization reached $4.68 billion. In 2004, Tony Tan Cactiong was named Ernst & Young World Entrepreneur of the Year. Forbes estimates his personal net worth at approximately $2.9 billion. And then he came to Florida. On March 18, 2017, Jollibee opened its first location in the Sunshine State and its first location anywhere in the southeastern United States at 11,884 Atlantic Boulevard in Jacksonville. The company's own press release stated the reason plainly. Jacksonville is home to the largest Filipino-American community in Florida. It was not a random expansion, it was a homecoming. Pinellas Park followed, then Pembroke Pines in South Florida, then Orlando, where in January 2023, thousands descended on the first Jollibee drive-thru in all of North America. Customers camped in their cars for 13 hours overnight. The line wrapped around the building from morning until midnight. One customer said it felt like a little piece of home away from home. Jollibee now plans to expand to 500 locations across the United States. The Tan Cactiong family is the only verified Filipino billionaire dynasty with direct, growing business operations across the state of Florida. A boy who once washed dishes in his father's restaurant, an ice cream scooper from Cubao who built a global empire and planted its flag in the Sunshine State. And there you have it. The 10 richest and most powerful Filipino families and figures connected to the state of Florida, from the grassroots food entrepreneurs of Jacksonville's Beach Boulevard to the billionaire dynasties of Manila, whose empires have literally set up shop in the Sunshine State. What makes this story so remarkable is not just the wealth itself, though the numbers are staggering. It is the journey. The arc from a retired Navy senior chief's daughter becoming the first Filipino American on Jacksonville's city council, to a boy who washed dishes in his father's restaurant building a fast food empire that now spans nearly 7,000 stores across the globe. Every entry on this list represents a different chapter in the same extraordinary story, the story of Filipino ambition, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of something better. Florida has always been a magnet for dreamers. From the Spanish conquistadors who first set foot on its shores, to the tech billionaires relocating to Miami for the tax breaks, the Sunshine State has drawn people who believe that tomorrow can be bigger than today. The Filipino community fits that tradition perfectly. They came for the Navy bases and stayed for the hospitals. They opened bakeries on side streets and restaurants on main boulevards. They ran for city council and challenged sitting mayors. And in the case of the Tanchakjung family, they built a global empire and decided that Florida, with its massive Filipino population, its booming growth, and its appetite for something new, was exactly the right place to expand next. The numbers tell part of the story. Tony Tanchakjung's billion-dollar fortune, Bobby Murphy's Snapchat billions, the Tsai family's $17 billion dynasty, the collective wealth of 180,000 Filipino Americans spread across the state. But the numbers alone miss the heart of it. The heart is in the chicken joy being served at midnight in Orlando to a college student who waited 9 hours in line because it reminded her of home. The heart is in a CPA from Murray Hill who looked at a billion-dollar city budget and said, "I can do this." The heart is in every Filipino family in Florida who turned sacrifice into success and built something that lasts. So after that journey, what did you think of our list? Were you surprised by who came out on top? Did we miss anyone who deserves a spot? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the richest Filipino families in Florida, do not forget to subscribe for more stories about wealth, power, and the communities that build empires from nothing. We will see you in the next one.